everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court. This is the 1996 Menendez brothers trial. We are reading through the transcript. They are on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. And this is obviously their second trial. First trial ended in a mistrial. We streamed through that, we watched it. And now we have to read the second trial and we're comparing the two. Wow, that light is bright. That's why I had it down. But I guess you guys may want to see my face. I don't know. So I'm going to let's get started here. We're in the middle of the state's case, part 43. Dr. Roger McCarthy's testimony. He's a mechanical engineer for the state, testifying for the state, and his testimony is a little difficult to get through just because he doesn't want to answer things, and it's taking Ms. Abramson quite a while to get an answer sometimes. So we're going to continue on where we left off. They went for their lunch break on Wednesday, November 15th, 1995, and we are coming back from lunch break and continuing on where we left off. Please hit the like button and make sure you are subscribed and all those YouTube things, and let's continue. So the court says the trial participants are here and are we all set? Miss Abramson says, yes, Your Honor. We marked a new exhibit for the court's record 295. The court says, okay, all right, let's get the jury out, please. So, Dr. Roger McCarthy, they've been going through, just to give you a little refresher, they've been going through all of the diagrams and how he got to his conclusions, and she's kind of breaking down a lot of basically getting him to admit that his diagrams are not accurate and the way that he came to some of his conclusions may not have been quite accurate. So that's where we're, that's how we're going into this testimony. So let's get started. Ms. Abramson says, thank you, Your Honor. Dr. McCarthy, I am going to turn your attention back to the two illustrations now that have been marked as evidence items in this case showing shot 1A and shot 1B. Is it now your testimony that those do not represent your reconstruction of shot 1A and shot 1 rather? No, I mean they do represent my reconstruction of shot 1. All right, well let me ask you a series of questions about them then. Sure. Based on what you demonstrated on the witness stand, are you saying that the green line is wrong? No, it's schematically correct. So, are you still saying that shot 1 could have been, the path of shot 1 could have been just the way that line is drawn, more or less horizontal from his left elbow, ending up in her left breast? It would just depend. The exact angle relative to the ground would just depend on his position and her position at the moment the shot was fired. I'm sorry? As they stand more erect, the shooter could have been holding the shotgun higher. If they bend over, the shooter can be lower. Obviously, he's limited by height of the crouch arm. They can't get any lower than that. But schematically, this is my reconstruction of the first shot. So you're saying the shooters were crouching down or standing on their tippy toes. Like what? So that's not what I am asking, though. What I need to know is it still within your thesis, if you will, that the position of the decedents could have been, as it is represented in these two exhibits, sitting the way you show them? With the understanding, as I testified originally, that outside of the geometry of the lower arm, the left arm, and the breast, mm, uh, they can move those points around. So this is schematically correct, but as I have indicated, I don't know if their legs were crossed. Okay, I can't put them precisely upright. I just used the anthropomorphic dummy in its its as purchased position. Well, let me ask you, though, if Mr. Menendez was in the position as illustrated before we broke for lunch, the green line would not be at an angle, correct? I'm sorry, I don't understand. The figure is anthropomorphically correct. I am not talking about the figure. The green line is supposed to represent a trajectory and a vector. an angle of some kind. That is correct. And for it to be accurate in any way, the figures have to be seated the way that you show them, correct? Not precisely. You could rotate the figures within certain degrees and still achieve the same geometry. That makes no sense. Isn't geometry based on angles and stuff? So if you rotate them on some degrees, then isn't that going to change everything? She says, but when you showed a positioning for Mr. Menendez with the left arm up and the right arm and right shoulder down with the shot coming in, that changes the angle, does it not? The way I'm holding the pointer now. No, so the angle. Let me finish the question. Okay. If the elbow is up and you are still going to end up in her breast, the angle is going to be dramatically different, isn't it? Only if you hold your elbow dramatically higher. That's why I indicated my uncomfortableness in taking an exact position with an elbow pose as so many inches. What you have to do is make this geometry line up, and you can do that from a number of positions. So you just admitted you made that line up. So it's a line basically showing the trajectory that on the image. There's a line, a green line or whatever that they're talking about, obviously. And she's saying, well, if you change this position or if this is different, then the line is wrong. And he's saying, no, no, you could change the body all in these other different positions and it's still going to be the same. No, that's not how geometry works, but cool. So you have an entire range then. It can be high, as I am showing it now, or it can come down to where it is virtually horizontal, the way you show it on 1A and B. Is that correct? That's correct. All you have to do is move his relative arm position and also her body position. If she is more tilted back, then an angle shot comes in horizontally to her breast. But of course, the shot doesn't have to be horizontal. That means it has to enter perpendicular to her torso. So if her torso, I can't speak right now. If her torso is perpendicular, it enters horizontal and it appears horizontal to the coroner. When the coroner in his report talks about direction, he is talking about direction, is he not? From where he sees a defect on the skin to a path inside the body. He is basically talking about direction inside the body relative to the axis of the body, correct? And they always use the same, as far as you know, they always use the same anatomical position? Generally, for the beginning designation of position, yes. So they are describing, if they describe up or down, it has to do with assuming the body in the basic anatomical position. Right. Right. And with respect to what we were showing before lunch, we'll strike that. With respect even to this, if the vector is angled at a greater angle than what you're showing here in order to account for his lifting his elbow and dropping his right arm, then we are not just talking about inside body angle, but the angle of the muzzle of the gun is now on a downward trajectory, correct? If he angles his arm up and his lower arm is down and she is rotated relative to the shooter, then yes, the angle relative to the floor is down, but there is no horizontal angulation in her breast relative to the standard anatomical position. Well, that's a fact that there isn't because that's what Dr. Golden said. Understood. But what I am saying is just because there is no angulation in the standard anatomical position, you don't know what the angle of the weapon is relative to the floor. All she has to do is have her body tilted and it comes in perpendicular to her back. Right. In fact, how many different positions with, say, 1 degree difference do you think her body could have been in to receive that breast wound? Oh, if you wanted to count every 1 degree angulation difference, especially of him, you are talking essentially an infinite number of positions. But the schematic is still the same, whatever you're talking about. Okay. All right. If you could answer just the question. Sorry. So there are actually thousands of different positions her body could be in. If you are going to count small enough differences, yes. And there are thousands of different positions his body could be in. If you count small enough differences, yes. The question is now you are eliminating the positions that are shown on those two exhibits, shot 1A and 1B. Are they out of the question now? No. All right. They just schematically represent the family of positions. What the hell does it even mean? Oh my gosh. This guy is driving me insane with his answers. I'm not asking about a family of positions. I am asking about the positions. There is only one position shown on these charts. That is correct. These are not moving pictures. Correct. These are not videos. They are not. This is a frozen image and one image only. Correct? Correct. Now, are you eliminating this image in 1A exactly as it's shown? Is that not possible? No, I am not eliminating that image. Are you eliminating the image in shot 1B? Is that not possible? No, I am not eliminating that image. So these two images are still within your analysis possible. Yes, the bodies could have been in exactly these positions as pictured. That's what you're saying. I am not comfortable with exact. Well, we are only saying could. I am not saying were. Yeah, but I'm not comfortable with exact. I didn't take increments, for instance, of his arm, his right arm, precisely on the wound. I mean, if I wanted an exact representation, I might have rotated him a little more to the right, perhaps. What are you talking about? If you wanted an exact position, you maybe should have tried to get more exact in the moment instead of later. Now you're second guessing how exact his positioning is. Well, sitting upright, let's ask you this to make it simpler. I am more interested in the line. Is this line still within the realm of possibilities? No question about that. No question about that? Yes. All right. Now, Dr. McCarthy, did you purposely leave objects out of these schematics because you rendered your positions impossible? No, but I probably left out. Is that no? Your Honor, may the witness finish his answer? The witness says, no, but I left objects out because they didn't play any part of my reconstruction, like the pillows and other things within the room. Ms. Amerson says, Your Honor, I have two more, unfortunately, two more of these illustrations, but these are slightly different than what's up there. The court says, that have been modified somewhat? Ms. Aberson says, yes, they have, Your Honor. Court says 296 and 297. Thank you. Court says, and this is what? Ms. Abramson says, this is 1A and 1B, Your Honor. 296 corresponds to 1A and 297 corresponds to 1B. Court says, all right. Ms. Abramson says, now, Dr. McCarthy, showing you what's been marked 296 and 297. Do you see what's been put back in that illustration that you left out? You put the TV control. Yes, the channel charger. Okay. Now, based on the photographs, and we have several of them up here right now, there is sitting right next to Mr. Menendez on the arm of the sofa a channel charger. So on the arm of the sofa there was a remote. Mm-hmm. And you can see that in three of the photographs that are up on 295. Mm-hmm. And it is correct, is it not, Dr. McCarthy, that there are individual pellet defects on Mr. Menendez's left elbow? Yes. Separate defects with space between them? Yes. And it is correct, generally, is it not, that that connotes a non-contact wound? An entry and non-contact wound. And it connotes some distance from the muzzle of the gun? Yes. And there are not all 27 pellets, so those 9 defects are only 1/3 of the pellets that were in that round. Yes. And so there is a spread even larger if you count all the pellets than the spread that's demonstrated in that left elbow, correct? Yes. So there are pellets coming towards that elbow that do not strike that elbow. Yes. Your theory is they go right by it, correct? That's a fact, but also my theory, yes. And you are aware, are you not, that there are no pellet defects, there's no breakage or pellet impacts on the channel charger. I am not aware of any. Putting up on the board, then, this 297 especially shows that along the vector that you have put in shot 1B, if that line is meant to be taken seriously, the channel charger would have been hit. No, this diagram is incorrect. If you can look at the other one, you can see the artist made an error in cropping the bar around the channel charger. You can see clearly in the other figure the shot would clear the channel charger easily. Okay. But this figure, 297, is the artist showing of the vector line, adding the channel charger to 1B where it actually was. This, I am only asking you what it shows. This shows the vector line intersecting the channel charger, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. No, your artist has cropped the vector line. In other words, there is not an intersection. If you look at the other figure, you will see the artist did not do a computation to hit the channel charger. If you look at the other shot, you will see exactly what he did. The narrow part there is meant to show it's hitting and going through the channel charger. Do you understand that? Exactly. Exactly. And you will see the other figure your artist made an error. Well, you can point it out when you get your turn again. I already have. Now, it's been your previous testimony, Dr. McCarthy, that the shooter was standing directly to the left of Mr. Menendez when shot number 1 was inflicted. Is that still your testimony? To the left, I am not sure what you mean by directly. Well, was he in front? Was he in front of the couch? The shot has a bias front to rear, so I don't think the shooter was linearly extended out to the left of the couch. I think he was somewhat forward. Somewhat forward? How much forward? Well, again, that would depend on exactly where the body position was, but somewhere forward. Well, did you ever angulate farther out than what your vector line shows? Your vector line stops. Oh, I guess, let's see. Looking at your illustrations for shot 1A, your vector line stops about what? How many inches away from the couch? I don't know. That wasn't a control. I am merely showing direction, not distance. And you have told us that you can't say anything about distance because your distance experiments were too variable. Is that right? I wouldn't say you can't say anything. As you properly pointed out, it's not a contact shot, but I can't pin the distance down very reliably other than to say it's a few feet. A few feet, a few feet. And what about the angle on 1B? You did this. You can measure the angle, can't you? But I can't. Depending on, I could rotate these figures through a few different positions and that angle would stay the same. The remaining evidence doesn't allow me to position it precisely. But you chose this frozen image to portray, did you not? Yes. And with respect to this frozen image, which you have now testified is one of the possibilities, there is an angle here of slightly front to back, correct? Yes. And if the bodies are in the position that you have shown them, and if they're receiving wounds in the directions that you have described, you really can't change that angle, can you? Well, sure you can, just where his position is. But then you have to change the position of the bodies as well. Well, of course. Well, I want everything to be frozen for a moment, okay? The bodies are in this position. The angle is where the angle is. I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't see where you're pointing. Well, you have a copy of it. Yes. What we are saying is you have frozen the bodies in this position and you have drawn the vector line at the angle that's shown here, right? Right. And if you just play it out, are you saying the shooter was right here at the vector line? I don't know. He could have been further away. Well, was he? I don't know. If I could have been able to reliably determine the shot distance, I could have. Well, he had to be at least the distance of the gun, didn't he? It was not a contact wound, yes. So there is some area between the elbow and the muzzle of the gun. Yes. A few feet at least, correct? Yes, correct. And how long is the gun? 30 inches. Put a tape on it, 30, 30 some odd. And you testified on direct examination that it was your opinion that the gun was being held in a position because of the recoil of this gun that it was being held up, correct? At the shoulder. That's what you said? I don't remember saying that precisely. I said you had to hold the weapon in a way to absorb the recoil. A shoulder is a good place. You can hold a shotgun down lower, but you have to hold it in a way you can handle the recoil. Do you want to change your previous testimony indicating that it could have been up here to lower? Objection misstates the previous testimony. Sustained. Well, do you have an opinion as to whether the gun was held up or lower? I can't give you a precise position of how the gun was held. I don't have a videotape of the murders, of the shootings. All I have is the remaining evidence. So he can't place the height of the gun, he can't place the position of the decedents, and he can't precisely place the angle of the shots. So what is he here for? I'm very confused. Let's talk about what you show. So in the frozen portrayal that you chose to memorialize. In this frozen portrayal, the vector line in shot 1A indicates that the muzzle of the gun would be a matter of just a few inches above the arm of the couch. Isn't that what that shows? Yeah, when you say a few inches, 6 to 12. The gun is off to the right, so it continues to elevate. The further you get away to the right, the higher it gets above the arm. This also shows because that's a slight downward angle. And again, the amount of downward angle depends on the distance and the exact position of their bodies. The shot is also, go ahead. Let's, let's do this. We know the side of the couch is only 28 inches high, correct? That's my recollection of the police diagram. And that's what you scaled into the computer, 28 inches high, correct? Again, that's my recollection. I would have to check to be certain. And based on how this appears, even if the elbow isn't touching the armrest of the couch, it's only a very short distance above it, right? Well, it's a few inches above it, yes. Certainly more than the thickness of the channel charger. How many inches above it? How many inches above it? She asks. I would have to scale off the diagram, but 3 to 4. So 3 or 4. So now we're at about 31 inches high. Is that right? Approximately, but there again. And at this angle, have you figured up how far up off the floor the gun would have to be? No, it would have to be a few more inches than that, but still lower than if someone who was 5'10", say, were holding it at shoulder height. Yeah, you would be looking at holding it down at your waist. So now it would have to be held at the waist, correct? If you were going to make a 30-inch geometry come out, yes. If you were to make a higher angle with more rotated figures, you could fire it from the shoulder. If we made an angle to indicate what you were talking about before lunch, the kind of dipping motion that you showed, then the gun obviously has to be pointed downward. No. And has to be held higher, correct? No, no, you can imagine a figure that goes through the rotation that I did and still maintain reasonably horizontal rotation between the left elbow and the right arm. That's why I hesitate to leave you with a specific scenario because the remaining evidence won't permit that degree of precision. But one of the things that you have already said is that one thing is for sure, which is the elbow can't be below the top of the couch. Correct. So it can't be lower than 28 inches. Correct. So if it starts rotating, it's going to be rotating to where it's above 28 inches. 28 inches from a seated figure by elbow here is higher than 28 inches. So, where is the shooter standing based on the frozen image, which is the only one you chose to portray of shot 1A. Unfortunately, 1B sort of gives you a better, they can see it, I'm sorry, right here. You can see it a little forward of the couch and off to the left. How far off to the left? There again, I couldn't reliably determine distance, but it's a few feet. What is off to the left, Dr. McCarthy? Do you want me to give you the pointer? I don't mean what direction is off to the left, but I mean what in the room is off to the left. Oh, well, far enough there is a doorway over there. And near enough there is a table and chairs, correct? There is a table and a chair. But now, where is that? Well, I'm going to get you one. Here, it's over here. Not quite directly off to the left, there is a table and chair, but we're going to get to some photographs now. Charlie in the big box. Those. No, right in your hand. It's in the right hand. Mr. Gessler says, in the box. Okay. Ms. Abramson says, in the box. Just take them out. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I feel like a piano mover. Court says, are these new exhibits? Ms. Abramson says, yes. 298 and 299. The court says, and is there one photograph of on each one of those? Ms. Abramson says, yes, Your Honor. They are just enlargements of things that have been in here to show scale. 299, Your Honor, is a just to show there's a record and a view is a view of the den looking west, and 298 is a view you might have to hold this one up for me. Put that one right here. I'm sorry, 298 is a view looking south. All right. Dr. McCarthy, you are familiar with these two photographs, correct? Yes. And 298, which is the one on the left, shows that there is a table and chairs pulled away from it to the left and slightly to the front of the couch, correct? Very slightly, yes. Well, let's see about very, because he says very slightly. Let's look at the rug. The couch appears to be sitting right at the end of the pattern of the rug, right? Mm-hmm. And we are looking at the chair here, the chair that is facing due south, and we can see that the back leg of the chair is at least a foot or more over the rug. It's over the rug. I mean, this shot shows it much better. I mean, the table. Well, every shot has its own perspective, correct? Yeah. And none of them are perfectly straight on, correct? When you say straight on, to what? This looks like pretty much perpendicular to the far wall. You can see, even with the chair, the same chair, see, it seems to be facing much more directly south when you take a shot looking south, correct? This shot would be better, maybe. I will withdraw my question. Let's start with this. First of all, you do see the channel charger sitting right there. Yes. And based on your vector, the shooter would be pretty much where the end of the pointer is right now. No, a little farther forward, I think. If you look at the vector, is it coming out from the chair? Obviously, he wasn't standing on the chair or in the chair if the chair was in that position when the shots were fired. Well, is there a problem if the chair was in that position? So basically, the angle in this position that he's showing would mean that l- um, one of the two of the shooters would have had to be standing where the chair was in the room. So obviously, he's incorrect in his positioning of the shooter there. Well, I don't believe he was standing in the chair, he says. No, that wouldn't make sense, would it? But he would be in the area in my reconstruction. So this area where I'm pointing, well, that and further out. Well, if it's further out, you are going to get an angle too extreme to line up with the elbow, the right arm, and her left breast based on how you have portrayed these folks in shot 1A and B. Again, it wouldn't be too extreme. It depends on the angulation of him and her on the sofa at that moment. What's the difference between the edge of the couch and the wall? I don't recollect off the top of my head. Is that, I don't know? I don't know as I sit here. What's the difference between the side of the couch and the table? Again, it's not much, but I couldn't tell you exactly just sitting here. And you're not proposing that the shooter is standing on the table, are you? No. Or sitting on the table? No. Or sitting in a chair? No. Or standing on a chair? That's correct. So somehow the shooter has to be in a place physically where he can be, where not the chair or the table, where he can be, where the muzzle of the gun is far enough away to cause a spread pattern on the left elbow. Would you agree with that? Yes. And then you can't tell us what that distance is because the spread pattern of your test rounds was too variable, correct? Correct, beyond saying it's a few feet. And if I were to suggest to you, Dr. McCarthy, that based on even the spread patterns you have, the muzzle of the gun would have had to have been more than 12 feet away from the elbow. Would you disagree with that? That you couldn't take one of my patterns and get a 12 foot, I would not disagree. And if I were to tell you that other people have tested the same model gun with the exact type of Fiachi number 4 and come up with a similar spread, that it would have to be at least 12 feet away. The muzzle of the gun would have to be 12 feet away to cause that spread pattern. Would you disagree with that? I would disagree with the statement. It would have to be that you could find some shots and some spreads might accommodate 12 feet. I am certain you are right. What? And 12 feet is for the muzzle. In addition, there is 30 inches for the gun, correct? Correct. So we are talking more like 15 feet for the shooter. Yes. And if I were to tell you that the distance between the door and the edge of the couch, even on an angle, is not 14 or 15 feet, would I believe you? That would be consistent with this view. But it would be inconsistent with the way you have portrayed shot 1 in figures 1A and 1B. Oh, I don't think so. If you extended that ray, it might very well make it out the doors. So you think now they're being shot at from outside the door? No, I think you have asked me numerous times about the distance of the shooter, and I think, at least I hope, each and every time I have indicated because of the uncertainty of the shot pattern, you could go to extremes like 14 feet. You might be able to get them as close as 2 feet. I would have to check the spreads, but nevertheless, within that range, they had to be somewhere. Well, they had to be somewhere. Certainly, everybody has to be somewhere. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, but it already does illustrate the difficulty of using the shot spread because it is so highly variable. Or the difficulty of deciding that two people who are capable of thousands of individual movements are in one particular position when a shot is fired at them. That's also difficult, isn't it? Ooh, that was a good question. Oh, it's not difficult. It's just one of the restrictions of a static media versus animation, or I could put multiple frames up. This also, I mean, this is the difference between 1995 and today because he has, I'm sure, these like antiquated, very remedial images that he's created, whereas now you could literally do a video recreation and you wouldn't have and go frame by frame, and you wouldn't have as much scrutiny. Well, you still would, but it would be different because it would be in movement, whereas these static images are trying to show movement and they're not doing the greatest job and they're only showing one recreation of it. So there's that. He says it's not difficult, it's just one of the restrictions of static media. Um, okay, so now you never did, however, experiment with any kind of anthropomorphic figures showing them standing when you received any of these injuries that you have included in shot 1, correct? I have not experimented with figures with the shot geometry standing. That is correct. So you couldn't even you should have at least tried it to rule it out, if nothing else, right? I mean, isn't that part of the defense is saying that the decedents were standing? So wouldn't you want to like try to prove or disprove if that were true? I guess not. Now, is it your opinion that the shot that entered Mrs. Menendez's left breast was a low velocity shot? I don't believe it had the full velocity of unfettered pellets, that is true. No, I didn't ask you that. I asked you if it was a low velocity shot, not if That's what I mean. The pellets did not have the full velocity with which they were discharged. It was a lower velocity shot. It still penetrated the chest, so you know you have to go 200 feet per second to do that. But it wasn't a 400 per second projectile either. Was it a low velocity shot? And you used that word. Relative to the original muzzle velocity, it was low, a fraction of it. Did it cause what you would call a superficial wound? I used that term. So, in the sense that it wasn't immediately fatal and was not incapacitating, yes. So, you would call a wound that penetrated the left breast, penetrated the chest cavity, caused 8 defects in the lower lobe from pellets, plus hit the upper lobe and caused 1,000 cc's of blood to seep into the pleural cavity superficial. Is that correct? No, probably not again, but at the time when I wrote the report, I meant that it wasn't immediately incapacitating. You wrote that, quote, the injuries to Mary Menendez are superficial from this shot, correct? In the sense that I just described, yes. Is that what you wrote? Yes. Objection asked and answered. Overruled. So you didn't describe it that way in the report. You simply wrote it that way, the way that I have read it, correct? Oh, now, that's not quite fair. Well, let me read you the sentence describing the transversal, and this is page 1 of your report dated July 13th, 1995. This sentence that we have been reading is as follows. These pellets further continue with greatly diminished energy into the left breast and arm of MM. MM means Mary Menendez? Yes. Because of the diminished energy, the injuries to Mary Menendez are superficial from this shot. Yes, that's what I wrote. So you wrote that. That is correct. Now, at the pretrial hearing, I pointed out to you that there were 8 defects in her left lobe, correct? Yes. And you don't think 8 defects in the left lobe are superficial, do you? No, probably. I would use a different word. But you justified, even at the pretrial hearing, calling it a low velocity entry on the basis that breast tissue is so easy to penetrate, correct? Not on the basis of the easiness of breast tissue, but because the depth they penetrated in the chest cavity I did not believe were consistent with a full velocity shot. And is it your opinion, Dr. McCarthy, that breast tissue is easier to penetrate than muscle tissue? Breast tissue requires less energy to penetrate than muscle tissue. A breast as a physical construct might make more energy to achieve initial penetration because the breast is so soft, but the tissue is much easier to cut. Much easier to cut? The tissue consumes less energy in the cutting, yes. So breast tissue is easier to cut than muscle. Is that your testimony? It is. Cut with a pellet, cut with a scalpel, cut with a knife, or cut with all three. All of the above. You, of course, have performed breast surgery? No. And since breast tissue is basically soft, the fact that the pellets didn't penetrate even deeper tells you that it was a low velocity shot. Is that right? Not so much. They made it through the breast, but they didn't make it very far into the chest cavity relative to what a full velocity shot would have. So they made it all the way through her lungs, didn't they? They made it into her lung. Do you know whether they came out the other side or not? It doesn't look from any of the evidence that I have reviewed in the medical reports that the back of the lung cavity was damaged, but they certainly didn't emerge from the back. So they didn't emerge from the back. And breast tissue, if I were to suggest to you that hypothetically the breast tissue is extremely difficult to penetrate, it's tougher and more fibrous and denser than muscle tissue, say as a hypothetical, would it then be within the realm of possibility that this was a full velocity shot and the reason it didn't penetrate out the back is because the breast tissue slowed it up? Oh, damn. She just totally caught him up in some BS. Talking about how breast tissue is soft and it goes it's easier to cut. No, no, sir. That's not the case. He says, well, first of all, I think your hypothetical is incorrect, but well, I didn't ask you if you thought my hypothetical was incorrect. I gave you the hypothetical because a medical doctor who is qualified to offer such an opinion is going to testify to it. Otherwise, I wouldn't give you the hypothetical. Mr. Khan says, I'm going to object to the speculation. The court says, let's not argue with the witness. The remark of counsel is stricken as ask your next question. But I loved it and I thought it was great because this guy is a pain in the ass. So I would not have stricken it from the record if I were the judge. I'd be like, yeah, continue, Miss Abramson. Tell him. All right, so let me offer you a hypothetical. Let's say Dr. Martin Fackler, who you have indicated is one of the leading wound ballistics experts in the United States, were to testify that breast tissue is much denser and more fibrous and harder to cut than muscle. Okay, that's a hypothetical. Could then the fact that the pellets didn't exit out her back be attributable to the density of breast tissue rather than the low velocity of the shots fired into her? If I am going to assume the truth of the correctness of what you say, then yes, of course, that could follow. Breasts are, however, not more dense than muscle. Okay, Mr. Breast Expert. So now he's a breast expert. This is so ridiculous, this guy. I can't even with him. He's a breast expert, he's a ballistics expert, he's a wound expert. He's a every expert that the state needs him to be. So you are saying if Dr. Fackler, who is a wound ballistics expert and a surgeon, if he were to testify that the breast tissue is denser, he is wrong? Is that what you're saying? No, I am confident that when you get Dr. Fackler in the area, he will distinguish between the difficulty of penetrating the structure, which because of its compliance is more difficult, as opposed to the energy consumption in the cutting task. Huh? That's what you are. That's what you think he is going to say. I would expect he will distinguish the two, yes. So you haven't been talking to him for the past 2 months about his reaction to your testimony or his opinions about this case, have you? No. Do you trust that I have? Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to move to strike this as argumentative. All right, sustained. But that's a great point. Ms. Abramson has been in contact with Dr. Fackler, getting the uh, data and evidence and information that she needs so she can put on the case. And she's telling him, this is what Dr. Fackler is going to testify to. And he's just like, no, I don't think so. Like, okay, well, are you talking to him or am I? Who's the one that's actually in contact with him? Because I don't think it's you, and you're not supposed to be talking to him about your testimony. So there's that. Okay. Ms. Abramson says, now, you indicated before lunch that Dr. Golden's report concerning the angles inside the body of the breast would indicate no directionality upward or downward, correct? No measurable angularity, correct? Up or down? That's correct. So that sounds like horizontal, doesn't it? Relative to the standard anthropomorphic position, yes. Not anthropomorphically. Anatomic. Anatomic, I am sorry. Anthropomorphic seems like a human. Anatomical is a human. I have been using anthropomorphic figures too long, he says. Right. Now, it is your understanding, Dr. McCarthy, that this wound to her left breast struck a rib? I would have to review the coroner's report. I can't recollect as I sit here. So, you don't remember. As I sit here, I do not. Do you remember testifying at the pretrial hearing that you thought it had struck a rib? I don't remember so testifying. I'm not saying I didn't, I just don't remember. Well, why don't we take a look at page 35633 of that testimony? Do you have that page? The court says the witness is looking at the coroner's report. Ms. Abramson says, I was going to cite him to a line. Witness says, I don't have it. I lost it in the noon shuffle. Ms. Abramson says, do you have it? The court says, why don't you just let him look at the coroner's report for a minute? Maybe that'll refresh his recollection and you won't have to have it. Ms. Abramson says, I am just asking what he testified before. It's too much paper. The witness says he indicates the wounds penetrate the skin and the chest wall in the region of the 6th and 7th left rib. They penetrate the rib cage into the pleural cavity. meaning the lungs. Ms. Abramson says, doesn't say anything about hitting the bone, does it? It says it penetrated the rib cage. Well, the rib cage is not the ribs, it's the space in between it, isn't it? Perhaps. I guess as I sit here, I don't interpret it that way specifically, but I am trying to remember the x ray. The court says, hold on, wait for another question. The witness says, I'm sorry. Ms. Abramson says, there is nothing in that coroner's report that says that any pellet struck a rib, correct? Not, it doesn't say those words. It says it penetrated the rib cage. And what is the rib cage, Dr. McCarthy? Just the cage formed by the ribs around the chest. And there is an outside to it and an inside to it. Yes. And when he says it penetrated the rib cage, it means the pellets go through into the rib cage into the inner space. Yes, it's possible that that cluster of pellets that we see on her breast missed a rib. I guess I just didn't think it, and I still don't, as I sit here, I think it's very likely. So you are speculating now there is rib damage, even though the coroner doesn't say there is. That's exactly what he did. He says, no, I recollect looking at an x ray, and that's what I would go back to, and I guess, but I mean, well, what did the x ray show, if you recollect? If I remember what the x ray showed, I wouldn't have to look at it. Well, what about the recollection of the x ray tells you it has anything to do with a rib damage? Well, then obviously it doesn't if there is no evidence of rib damage on the x ray, no particulates of the pellets, there isn't any. Particulation, pellets. You're saying these pellets, which wound up in her chest, came through his right arm, which was broken, correct? I guess. And couldn't have broken up some of the pellets. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So even if there are pellet particles in his left chest, you can't attribute them to her ribs versus his bone unless you see damage to the bone or to the rib, correct? You may not. It would depend on their placement and their relative geometry. I am having trouble with the laws of physics here, Your Honor. The court says move that podium to a little to the right. Miss Abramson says we need a bigger podium. Could we requisition for one from the county? The court says we have a bigger one. Miss Amerson says I need one with a shelf underneath. Court says we have a bigger one. Miss Amerson says let me show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 169. Do you recognize that? That is an x-ray of a rib. Do you see a broken rib? No, no rib here looks fully broken to me. So no rib looks even partially broken, does it? Well, now you got me here. While I have you here, let me just ask you this. You have no training in reading x-rays, correct? Not medical x-rays. I read x-rays of mechanical parts. So this isn't a mechanical part, is it? Well, it's biological. It's a human being, correct? That's correct. Not a car, right? Absolutely. Objection argumentative, Your Honor. Ms. Abramson says it's not a piece of material or machinery. Wait a minute, there is an objection. The objection is overruled. The witness says it is a human body as opposed to a weld or something of that nature. Do you want to point to some area on there that you believe shows a broken rib and circle it? As I just indicated, I don't see a broken rib. Do you see a fractured rib? There's areas, no, there's nothing here I would say is fractured. Thank you. But you did offer the opinion at the pretrial hearing that you thought there was rib damage, correct? I'll show you if you'd like to see your testimony. The witness says, could I see my specific words? I can't imagine one of my reconstructions regarded. She says, quote, my recollection is there is some rib damage. Right there. Uh-huh. Answer. I would like to look at the x-rays. My recollection is that there's some rib damage, but I don't think the right turn is necessary. Okay, I mean, yes, I said that. Thank you. Now, you did a pellet count concerning shot number 1, didn't you? Yes, I have. And there was some reason why you changed the way that you were counting the pellets in the proceeding from the way that you counted the pellets at the pretrial hearing. Yes. Okay, and what was the reason why you changed the way that you counted the pellets? Because you objected to me reading x-rays and counting pellets, so I merely embraced Dr. Lawrence's reading of x-rays and counting pellets. He still came out to the same count. So you decided you're not going to count. You're going to let Dr. Lawrence do your counting for you, correct? Objection, argumentative, Your Honor. The court says sustained. Let me ask you this. Dr. Lawrence indicated that he thought since there were only 5 pellets in Mr. Menendez's left elbow, but 9 defects, that 4 pellets probably just fell away. Objection, misstates the evidence. Sustained. I don't believe that does misstate the evidence, Your Honor. The court says the way it's phrased, it does. Miss Abrams says that 4 pellets struck his elbow but didn't penetrate. Do you remember that correctly? Or do you remember that testimony? I do remember your suggestion of that. I don't remember him agreeing to that. Well, let's assume, hypothetically, because I can pull out the transcripts, that he did agree that 4 struck that didn't go through. That he did agree that 4 struck that didn't go through. I don't know. Objection, motion to strike. Rephrase the question. Ask him to assume. In the question, she was asking him to assume something. Assume that Dr. Lawrence did testify that he believed 9 separate pellets struck the left elbow, only 5 entered, and 4 went somewhere else, okay? Assume that. All right. Can you do that? I have difficulty. I want you to assume he said that, okay? Okay, I have difficulty since I was here, and the court says just disregard the fact that you were here and assume you weren't here. The court is getting annoyed with him at this point. Like, shut up, sir. Just just follow the instructions of the lawyer. It's not that difficult. Ms. Abramson says, assume he said that. Would you agree that that's possible? Oh, heaven forbid. No, you can't have a 1,200 foot per second pellet hit any tissue and fall to the ground. That just does not happen. I didn't say fell to the ground or bounce off. Mr. Khan says, Mr. Khan objected when I said fall to the ground. I said, assume he said 9 pellets hit the elbow, 5 penetrated, the other 4 went somewhere else. Now, does it make sense to you ballistically? No, you can't have pellets from a discharge that haven't struck somewhere else and been dramatically slowed. Strike an element of tissue at any range that I think is reasonable to discuss here and not have penetration. These pellets this mass will penetrate down 200 feet per second. So you disagree with Dr. Lawrence. Mr. Khan says, may the witness finish. The witness says, no, they leave the muzzle at 1,200 feet per second. Ms. Abramson says, I think much of this is non-responsive. The court says he has a right to explain his answer. Have you finished? The witness says, just to say they leave at 1,200 feet per second without something to knock off most of their energy, they will penetrate. Okay, so do you disagree with Dr. Lawrence that if that was his testimony, you disagree with him? You think he's wrong? No, I was here for his testimony and I don't remember disagreeing with anything he said. You're merely suggesting a hypothetical in resolution to the defect count. Oh my God. This is why he's on the stand for days, because he just is so argumentative. Dr. McCarthy, I just asked you a hypothetical question where you were supposed to assume certain things. You understand that? Objection, argumentative. The court says you've gone beyond that and asked him how to characterize. Ms. Abramson says the question is, if that's how Dr. Lawrence testified, whatever your memory may be, do you disagree with him? And I think you say yes. Is that right? Assuming, hypothetically, he says what you're saying he said, yes, I would disagree with that. It certainly would not be correct. All right. Now, your shot 1, as you described it on direct examination, includes wounds to Mr. Menendez's left elbow, correct? Yes. Wounds to Mrs. Menendez on her arm, correct? In her right arm, yes. In her right arm. I want to go back to 295. Mr. Levin, I need your height. I want to take this down I wanted to point now, okay, on 295, if we look at the line of photographs on the left, the middle photographs show a large gaping defect on what Dr. Golden calls, and Dr. Lawrence. Dr. Golden is the one who did the autopsy. Dr. Lawrence is the one who testified in this trial. They both call it the medical aspect of the right arm, correct? Yes. And below that appear to be a series of circular, more or less circular red marks. Defects, correct. And it is your opinion, is it not, based on the way that you show the shot pattern, this vector, rather, the green line, that both the large gaping defect and the individual pellets are all part of one shot? Yes. Now, Dr. Golden did disagree with that based on his report, correct? Yes. And Dr. Lawrence himself said he doesn't think that's the most likely scenario. Remember that testimony? Yes, at various times he said that. He waffled a little, didn't he? Yes. But one of his positions was that he did not think these two were the same shot, correct? He did not think that was the greatest likelihood. That is correct. So you're not really diagramming in these drawings what Dr. Lawrence believes is the most likely scenario, but what you believe is the scenario, correct? No, Dr. Lawrence had no disagreements that the individual defects were an entry wound and that this shot caused those defects. What he was less comfortable with was the major wounds was also part of the same shot. So I connected the elbow part with this, and I do believe the upper defect is part of the same. He says the two are not the same, and you are considering both the same. Objection misstates the testimony. Overruled. The witness says, no, my diagram only shows through the elbow. I believe that the coincidence of that shot being so close to the other one is too great to be a coincidence. But for the diagram, it is correct, irrespective of what you do with that defect. Let me stop you for a moment. You're saying the diagram is only showing the individual defects and not the wound that's represented by the larger one? No, I believe they were both caused by that shot. But you said the diagram is only showing the one in the elbow. That's these defects, correct? No. Let me put it this way. I don't mean to imply that the diagram indicates all those parts being injured by the same shot. I believe the major defect is also part of that shot. But Dr. Lawrence indicated that he didn't, right? No. That's what we're talking about. He indicated it was possible. He just was not the most comfortable with that explanation. He thought it was unlikely. He thought most likely that they were separate, correct? At various times he expressed a thought that it was a greater likelihood, yes. All right. So what I'm asking you is if he thought it was a greater likelihood they're separate, then they're not both caused by shot number one, which is what your green vector line shows. Is that right? We agree on that? What I believe or what he believes? What he believes. I think he believes it's more likely it was. Well, at various times he thought it was more likely it was caused by a separate shot. So if that's true, if you're supposed to be relying on Dr. Lawrence's medical opinion here, correct? Yes, he indicated that he thought it was possible. Possible, but not likely. He thought another shot was perhaps more likely. Fine. You don't ever show in any of these reconstructions another shot causing the upper defect, do you? That's correct. I don't think it works. If, in your personal opinion, with no medical expertise, you have decided that these two shots are one, even though the medical expert who was brought in here to support you thinks that's unlikely. Is that correct? No, I think he indicated that it was possible. He thought another shot was more likely, and I'm not even sure that I disagree with him on that, except that when you diagram all the shots, a separate shot there doesn't work. You can't make it work. Didn't work to add up to 12, right? No, I mean, you can. That's what you meant. That's what you mean by doesn't work. Doesn't add up to 12. You can take that shot and then make the output of the shot hit Mary somewhere and take care of another shot. Try and stitch that together. You can make even 12 work with that supposedly. Try it or start adding extra shots. So there were 11 buckshot. Let's talk about this though. You don't believe, do you, that the pellets that penetrate these separate defects in the inner arms, that those are the wounds that pass through into Mary Menendez's left breast, correct? I haven't gotten down to that detail of pellet penetration. Well, you believe you know very well that there's this large defect on the medical aspect and another large medial on the medial aspect and another large medial defect on the lateral aspect. Correct. So it's your opinion that the defect on the lateral aspect is an exit wound? Yes, as confirmed by the shirt. As confirmed by Dr. Golden. However, Mr. Khan says objection, misstates the testimony. The court says, wait. At this point, it's argumentative. Ms. Abramson says, moreover, you're not a fiber expert or criminalist, so you can't rely on the shirt. Dr. Lawrence testified about the shirt. And he wasn't a fiber expert either, correct? I recollect that's what he testified. Well, he testified he wasn't a fiber expert. Do you recollect that? Yes. Thank you. Let's talk about this defect. This defect, in your opinion, is an entrance wound? On that side, right. And on the other side, in your opinion, it's an exit wound, correct? Yes. And is it your opinion that it is through the connecting series of holes, this large defect here, and a hole on the other side, that the pellets pass through into Mrs. Menendez's left breast, correct? Yes. And you have described that previously on direct examination of left to right. Yes. And if I understand left to right is this, what I'm holding now across my chest. Yes. So left to right is not this, the way I'm now holding the pointer perpendicular. That's right. And what I'm now doing is called front to back. I would call it that, yeah. If I wanted to show front to back slightly left to right, then I would have to move the pointer even rotated halfway in between the two directions, okay? Whatever. Let's just see if I understand my basic junior high school geometry, although my hand may not be straight. Right now, I'm holding the pointer in left to right on a 180-degree angle, correct? Close, yes. And then if I rotate it so it's front to back, it's now formed a 90-degree angle to my chest. Correct. And if I put it here, it's a 45-degree angle, approximately. All right, so you described this wound as left to right. Did you mean 180 degrees? No, directionally more like I've indicated in the diagram. But do you discount 45 degrees? No, you could probably rotate the bodies around to get 45. I think that's getting to the edge of the envelope. Dr. Golden described it as front to back and left to right. Yes. Did you ever pay attention to the photograph that shows Mrs. Menendez's body where the brassiere is exposed? I looked at that photo. And do you see in this photo pellets in in the front of the cup of the brassiere? Pellets or defects? Holes. Holes, yes. So holes about the size that a pellet would make. Yes, there appear to be the defects on a picture of that size. They appear to be defects on a picture of that size. I don't know. Okay, so that's not the side of her brassiere, not the front of it, correct? I don't understand what you mean. It's at the left. I tried to do this, but a brassiere has a a cup, a side, which is a panel down the side. Do you understand that? I understand that. It is in the cup area, but it's on the side of the cup. Well, it's on the left side of the left breast. That's right. But the fact that it's on the left side doesn't mean the pellets came from a 180-degree angle. They could have come in straight to the left side of the left breast. Then that would be inconsistent with the coroner's testimony that they came left to right. He said front to back and left to right. You recognize he said front to back and left to right, correct? Right. And is it your understanding that the coroner gives the main direction first? That would be logical, but I wouldn't say I have an understanding of that. Well, let's say that that is what he meant, that it's mainly front to back and only slightly left to right. That disagrees with your contention, doesn't it? Oh, no, that just means that she was rotated more towards the shooter than I have her shown. So you don't show her in a position where she would have received wounds that are more front to back than left to right. And that's correct. You'd have to rotate her a little more and face the shooter. You forgot in your direction, did you forget to talk about one of the wound areas on Mr. Menendez? Well, I don't get to forget or remember anything. I just get to answer questions. Well, did you and the prosecutors discuss that you didn't want to talk about what the coroner called wound number 6 to Mr. Menendez? Certainly, we did not have such a discussion. You did not testify at all about the wounds that appear on the right curved side of Mr. Menendez's chest, correct? I don't recollect testifying about them. Because you didn't. Okay, that's why I don't recollect. Now, do you believe that those marks on his chest are affiliated with shot 1? Oh, yes, I was very comfortable with Dr. Lawrence's testimony in that regard. Well, you had a different opinion about what caused those when you wrote your report and when you testified at the pretrial, didn't you? I guess I don't remember, so. Well, you thought those were graze wounds caused by pellets coming in contact with the body, didn't you? Yes, as Dr. Lawrence testified. Well, Dr. Lawrence testified that it was a burn caused by fabric being dragged across the right side of the chest. Oh, I see what you mean. I didn't mean to differentiate between the shirt and the pellets. I mean, so you never mentioned a shirt in your report. You talked about pellet wounds. Yes, but rather, whether it's fabric wrapped around a pellet or the pellet directly, I mean. So let me see how you understand it. He didn't talk about fabric wrapped around the pellets. He talked about the shirt pulling, just the shirt, pulling across here because some pellets are pulling the shirt farther down, but the shirt is pulling and scratching or abrading this part of the chest. Did you understand that that was what he meant? I remember him talking about fabric abrading. Of course, there's holes in the shirt. Pellets got through it. There are holes, and so far there's been no testimony as to whether they were caused by pellets or wadding. Do you understand that? I'm trying to remember if Dr. Lawrence was asked about that. I'm not sure I was here for all of his shirt testimony. So you might not have been here when he indicated that the holes he saw were consistent with a wad going through. You weren't here for that. I don't remember him testifying to anything in that regard. That is correct. So if he did testify that the holes were the right size for a wad to go through, you just weren't there for that. Is that right? I don't recollect his testimony in that regard, so if he did talk about it, I must not have been here. Now, are you aware, Dr. McCarthy, that the transcripts, everything that's being said in this trial is being transcribed by 2 court reporters on a daily basis? I wasn't aware you were getting dailies, but I guess I am now. And that means that the day after testimony, there's a transcript that contains it all available to both sides. If you get a daily, that is generally the procedure, yes. And you haven't read the dailies, as you call them, the daily transcript of Dr. Lawrence's testimony, is that correct? That is correct. So when you came in here to testify knowing that you needed to rely on his medical expertise, you didn't even bother reading what he said to you, did you? Object as argumentative. Overruled. The witness says, I was here for his parts of his testimony, but I haven't gone back and read the dailies. That is true. So you don't know what he said about some things for which you weren't here. That's correct. And no one, for example, has provided you even with summaries of what he said. That's correct. Frankly, Dr. McCarthy, you don't really care what Dr. Lawrence said. Your mind is made up long before you knew he existed. Isn't that true? No, although I was much pleased by the fact that our reconstruction just from the physical evidence that there really wasn't any need to revise anything from his analysis. Not that you would revise anything anyway because you think you're perfect, don't you, doctor? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Now, on the right arm wound, Dr. McCarthy, which side is higher and which side is lower? If you, again, there's been medical testimony of that. I'm not interested in medical testimony. I'm interested in your opinion on this for the moment. It looks like the rear exit wound is higher than the entry wound. Without using exit and entry, would you know? This is lateral. Do you know what lateral means? Yes. Could you show me on your arm the lateral part of your right arm? My arm here, out here, out here. Yes. Medial in towards the medial is the kind that if you're standing with your hands in the anatomical position, okay, it's the other way around. Lateral is next to the body and medial is outside of the anatomic position. This is the anatomic position. Didn't you just say medial is towards the center and lateral is towards the outside? Only in that position we see the arm in the photographs. In the anatomic position, this is the anatomic position with palms out. Yes. Okay, and lateral and medial are basically each side of the arm rather than the front or the back. It's the side. That's correct. And in the anatomic position, the front of the arm is actually what we call the inside, right? Holding your hands as you've indicated. Yes. And that's the anatomical position. Otherwise, we have to all agree on one position. Fine. So this is the inside. It's called the anterior portion of the arm, the front. Right. So do you know that? I'm not comfortable confirming that use of anterior. All right. If I rotate the arm so that it's no longer in the anatomical position, but in the opposite position, the surface now is now exposed is usually referred to as the back of the arm. In an anatomical position, it's the back of the arm, right? I'm comfortable referring to that as the back of the arm. Okay, and the sides are what's on the other side, correct? Yes. In the anatomical position for the medial aspect, that side is away from the body, right? Medial? I'm willing to go with your terminology. I'm just unwilling to confirm that's the universal term. So keep going, he says. He's told her so many times, like, go on or keep going, like he's the one in charge of the floor here. So that's certainly what Dr. Golden was talking about. This part in the anatomical position is the lateral side. I'm not comfortable confirming your statement. Let's do this. We see a right arm here for Mr. Menendez. Yes. And this is the part that's injured, or is this the part that's injured? In this shot, we're looking at the injury roughly in this area. Aren't we further inside? Could I point to your arm? Sure. Aren't we really here? And she points, almost in line with the armpit. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. That's the medial aspect. All right. That's where the wounds. Isn't that the way Dr. Golden describes it? That the hole is the medial aspect? No, I'd have to go back to the autopsy report to confirm. Go back to the September 95 revision. That's where he describes it. I'll tell you what, let's have some time because we only have 15 minutes more today. All right, we'll do this tomorrow for the moment. Let's do this. This wound that we see here in the photograph on 295, this big hole below, are these individual defects? Uh-huh. Is this hole lower to the arm, meaning closer to the hand than the hole that's on the opposite side of the arm? Or is this wound higher or on the arm than the hole on the opposite side? I'd have to look at the rear exit, but my recollection is that the entry here is lower. Lower. And you keep talking about the rear as exit, but Dr. Golden talks about the rear as entry, correct? Yes. And Dr. Lawrence wasn't sure. Correct. So through Dr. Lawrence, so though Dr. Lawrence wasn't sure, and Dr. Golden says that that what we're looking at in those photographs is an exit wound, your opinion is that it's an entry wound? Correct. And your opinion is that the marks that are appearing on Mr. Menendez's right chest are caused by something traveling from his left to his right? Yes. and the something is pellets. Pellets or wadding. I'm uncomfortable with Dr. Lawrence's explanations. He doesn't say wadding. He says it's a shirt. He's not talking about pellets at all causing this. He says it's just the shirt pulling. Yeah, but what pulls the shirt? Is it pellets? Is it wadding? I mean, that's not terribly. It doesn't matter. Is that right? It's not a terribly important detail to my reconstruction. That's correct. Now, for Dr. Golden, however, what this meant was proof that the large defect that we see in these photographs on 295 was an exit wound, correct? Mr. Khan says, I would object as vague as to time since there's been amendments to Dr. Golden's report. The court says, in reference to the amendments, Ms. Abramson says, yes, in reference to the complete description that he gave on this wound. Well, let me strike that. You sat down and talked to Dr. Golden about this very wound, didn't you, Dr. McCarthy? I did, indeed. And you were arguing with him, possibly friendly, but arguing about whether this is an entry or exit wound, correct? He was very professional, and we merely discussed it, but yes, we discussed that specific detail. Maybe say disagree rather than argue, I think is a better term than argue. All right, he was very firm in maintaining that, in his opinion, what we are seeing there, the defects on the medial aspect on the arm, was an exit wound. No. If it hadn't been for the other coroner there, I think Dr. Golden was reasonably persuaded we were correct. It was the other coroner there that was so firm on the issue. I think he eventually persuaded Dr. Golden that we were correct. He certainly, I wouldn't characterize his actions as very firm. I mean, he seriously considered the evidentiary issues we raised. Are you saying, Dr. McCarthy, that Dr. Golden is not firm that the injury is an exit? Is that what you're saying, without all the rest of that? Oh, no. In his final report, he eventually comes down on the side of exit. I was trying to answer your question about his view in our discussion, which I think is what you asked me in the preceding question, which was a different question. So he was nice to you in the discussion, is that what you're saying? He was very professional, yes. He didn't call you names or say you were wrong or silly or foolish. No, he certainly did not. And he wrote a report subsequent to your discussion with him, is that right? Yes. And that report is dated September 25th, 1995, correct? It's right in front of you. The court says you're asking about Dr. Golden's report. The witness says, I don't have the supplement right in front of me. That's what I was looking for. Ms. Abramson says, you don't have the supplement. The witness says, I haven't found it in my book yet. Ms. Abramson says, well, let me give you mine. I have many copies. The witness says, okay. Ms. Abramson says, could you move the computer? I'm afraid I'm hitting it and breaking it. It's so expensive. He says, it is. I know. Do you need the one for Mrs. Menendez also? Can you find that one? I found that one. It's just his. So why don't you hold on to his? Does that appear to be a September 25th, 1995 amendment to the autopsy report? Yes. And does that amendment, in fact, give a description of wound number 3, which is the one that we are talking about up on the board now? Yes, it does. And in that report, doesn't Dr. Golden indicate that what we're looking at in this photograph is the exit wound? Yes. And in fact, he associates what's on number 6 with number 3, indicating the direction from which caused these marks on the right breast from right to left. I'm sorry, you'll have to. When he talks about wound number 3 itself, he talks about the wound track through the skin, the subcutaneous tissue and muscle passed from the lateral to medial. Is that right to left, correct? He's referencing a change to paragraph 3. I'd have to go back to the original. I'm reading that paragraph. He rewrote the whole thing about number 3. Let me ask you something, Dr. McCarthy. Have you seen this before? Yes. You hadn't read it as of October 2nd and 3rd when we did the pretrial hearing, correct? I don't remember having done so by then, no. And you've had it since then? I probably even had it then, I just hadn't read it. And have you read it since then? Yes. And have you sat down and tried to compare it to the photographs to understand what he's saying? No, not in any great detail. Well, why don't we read together? He calls what's on the chest wall wound number 6, correct? Now you got me, yes. Okay, you see where he's written by manipulation of the right upper extremity. That means the right arm? Yes. And bringing it adjacent, does that mean next to? Yes. The right lateral thorax is the right lateral thorax what I'm pointing to, do you know? Yes. Okay, it is. Shotgun wound number 3, which you understand to be this hole, correct, may be related to shotgun wound number 6 below. Do you understand this is number 6? Uh-huh. And he's describing it further below in the report, correct? Uh-huh. Indicating that there is entry and exit through the right upper arm and re-entry from right to left, causing the graze wound to the right upper chest. Uh-huh. Right? Yes. So he is talking about a direction here of exit from the right arm and a travel across the chest to right, from right to left. Yes. Thank you. Do you need a copy of this? Oh no, I have a copy. Now, if this wound, which Dr. Golden has numbered number 3, is is as he describes it, lateral to medial, right to left, then neither the defect that we see here, the large hole in his arm, nor any of the patterning on his chest would be caused by your shot number 1. Mr. Khan says, objection misstates the testimony that it was right to left as opposed to maybe right to left. What? Oh, maybe right to left. The court says overrules. The witness says, with your assumption, you are correct. Ms. Abramson says, okay, so none of those wounds could have been caused by shot number 1 if Dr. Golden's direction is correct. Correct. And, well, strike that, but you do include it right now for the purpose of your reconstruction, right? Oh, yes. If you look at the shirt, there's no way they could have been going from right to left. Fine. Is there a hole in his chest? There is a hole in his chest, but not precisely in that area. There's one stray pellet defect found in his chest. Not precisely in what area? Where those grazings are. It's again in Dr. Golden's wound number 6, individual shotgun pellet wounds of the anterior chest. So he's calling it part of the same wound, number 6, right? Yes. Don't you think if he writes about them in the same wound, he means they're part of the same wound? Well, you can't have it both ways. He says the trajectory is front to back, no angulation or deviation is evident. He can't say that about it and then say he can't have it both ways. So you've heard, or you've never heard of the billiard ball effect. Is that what you're saying? Oh, I have. The fact a pellet striking another pellet can make them both change direction? Yes. They just can't make a right turn. So you don't really need to make a right turn, do you? All you have to do is turn the chest wall. Isn't that right? I don't understand what you mean. You can't graze the chest wall and then enter front to back. In other words, you can't have a pellet grazing the surface of the chest and entering front to back without a left turn. Oh, my alarm's going off. Hold on. In fact, you can't have a pellet that you have designated as going across from his left arm to the right arm. You can't have a shot column that curves and wraps around the curved surface of the chest wall at all, can you, Dr. McCarthy? You cannot have a shot column curve. You are correct. Right. So these can't be because they're on the curved portion of the graze wound. Following this vector line you've drawn to shot 1B, they have to be something else. That's absolutely wrong. The shot column can push the chest surface flat when it goes by. In fact, it does. The chest springs back to its curved shape after the abrasion. You can see the bones striking out in the rib cage of Mr. Menendez, that very bony rib cage. Do you see that? In this position, as a guy who carries about the same amount of weight, in this position, I don't have bony skin surface, unfortunately. What? But you still have abrasions, as you're calling them, on the surface side of the chest. So you're saying the shot column flattened his chest? In the seated position right now, I don't look I don't look half bad lying flat on the hard surface like this in terms of weight. When I sit up and my skin loosens like it is now, you can depress my chest surface half an inch easy, and thus you don't have ribs holding that original hit. What the hell is he talking about? He only sees it because he's lying on the flat surface. Answer me this, Dr. McCarthy. Can you have a pellet coming in contact with the skin that does not cause a tear in the skin? A pellet shot from a shotgun that does not cause a tear in the skin. If it doesn't hit the skin and it only grazes the surface, you will not necessarily tear it. You could abrade it, particularly if there was fabric. If it doesn't actually hit the skin, you're still saying it's going to depress the chest wall, even though it's only grazing on by? No, what I'm saying is it could engage a shirt with a fabric barrier and not be a direct hit and not a steep enough angle to cut the skin. It definitely could depress the skin. Depressed. So much that it could flatten a curved surface. You don't have much curvature in this picture, and standing up you'd have even less curvature. That's your medical doctor side talking right now, is that right, Dr. McCarthy? Geometry. A picture speaks for itself. Do you know what this is? This is an exhibit I'd like to mark. It was marked, or I'd like to remark it. It was marked in the first trial, exhibit number 76. The court says exhibit 300 now. Thank you. The witness says, your question is, can I identify this photograph? Ms. Abramson says, yes. Can you identify what's shown in that photograph? Looks like a portion of the wound in the nipple area of Jose. So, Mr. Menendez, yes. Let me mark this 300 before I forget the number. No stickies, I'm sorry. And do you see a little red dot on this photograph that has a 6 on it? Yes. And if I were to tell you that that is a photograph that Dr. Golden used in the previous trial to indicate wound number 6, is that consistent with your understanding of what wound number 6 is? Yes. And do you see this as an object that is heavily circled in black? Yes. And if I were to tell you that that circle indicates where Dr. Golden believed the pellet was located when it was if I tell you that that circle indicates where Dr. Golden believed the pellet was located, that was in Mr. Menendez's chest. The witness says, I have no basis to disagree with that. Okay. And do you remember, were you in the courtroom? Let's see if we can line this up with what's on your chart. I might have to just hold it at this point. I'm lining it up on the same axis as the photograph on 294 that shows the same wound. Yes. And do you see the thing that's circled on 300 lines up it lines up with what I'm circling now? Yeah, pretty close. On 295. And were you here when Dr. Lawrence testified that he thought it was this mark, the longer mark, that Dr. Golden had identified as the one containing the pellet defect? I was not. At least I don't recollect being. The court says, okay, let's take our break now. Ms. Abramson says, thank you, Your Honor. The court says, we'll resume with the jury tomorrow at 8:30. Don't discuss the case with anyone and don't form any final opinions. And that is the end of February. Sorry, why do I want to say February, but it's not. It is November 15th, 1995. We still have Dr. McCarthy on the stand for a little while longer, so we'll get into more of his testimony tomorrow. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, do all the YouTubey things, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, and bye now.